time to introduce our Speaker Spark. And our Speaker Spark's topic for today is the pivot. My journey to oneness through self-discovery and near-death experience. Our speaker brings decades of experience to wellness in working with media as a journalist, marketing, and public relations professional, branding manager, and an award-winning sportscaster. He also has a current and expanding alternative medicine practice in Biontology, Photon Light Therapy, Tui-Na, is that correct, Greg? Tui-Na Chinese Medical Massage, and TongRen Quantum Healing. And if you happen to be in a pharmacy, you may see him assisting customers with natural remedies and wellness supplements. Greg, our speaker, came into his second career a few decades ago from suddenly becoming violently ill, and no medical team could diagnose the ailment. So he then went on an unusual journey to heal himself. And on that journey, he found a path that helps others to heal to this day. So let's just get on with it let's give our warm welcome to our Speaker Spark, Greg Madden.
Thank you, Susan. And good morning, everybody. Blessings and blessings and blessings to all of you. I'm really happy to be here. Some of my really good friends have joined, and now the rest of you are coming online, and I'm getting to meet some new faces today. Thank you, Susan. That was very, very nice. I'd also like to thank the invitation, which came from Ken Kaplan, a man I've never met before, but have exchanged lots of ideas and thoughts and feelings even through Facebook. So Ken, thank you very much. I've enjoyed our interactions, and I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out to me and to think that my story could be helpful to others. Also Glenda, Reverend Glenda, who helped me through this process of getting ready to join you folks for a few moments here. And I understand there's a 20-minute basic limit, so I'm on the clock.
Oh, you're ahead.
I'll try to make sure I can pull this all together at times. Some of my good friends have heard this story before. Friends from the Each One Teach One family. Evie, who else is here? I think Nellie is part of that group, and Harriet, and certainly Karen and Paul Cook, who have been really integral parts of my journey. It's called the pivot, but many things are how they turn and how we pay attention to the string that goes through, similar to what Susan had just said a little while ago. I can remember being a very young child in bed at night, trying to fight off the monsters underneath my bed, but thinking that they can't really get to me because I thought I was a Native American medicine man for my whole life. And that was in the early stages of my life. When I watched the cowboy and Indians movies, I always pulled for the Indians. Dances with Wolves is a good example of how I actually feel deep in my core. So let's fast forward from being in bed as a toddler and moving on up through the year 2005. I had gone through the Watergate era and gone to journalism school, became a journalist and a sportscaster in Boston for most of my professional life for 45 years. And I moved along that path. But as I got older, I found that the jobs for broadcasting, even in sportscasting, were going to the younger guys because they didn't want as much money for the same work. So I was starting to get aged out there, and I prayed and prayed and prayed for what could be maybe my next journey. I moved home, as my brother had mentioned maybe 5 years before, in my early to middle 50s. I'm 64 now. And the message was, Jim was like, why don't you go home and regroup? And my brother, I didn't want to do that. Not at all. So at the point where my career was not really flourishing to that point, and my mom was getting older, I moved home to my high school bedroom in my 50s. And that was a real kick in the pants. It was very, very difficult for me. I pulled the drapes down in my room. There was a lot of depression. I felt like a complete failure. I know I had the talent to be a top level sportscaster, but it was never coming through. And maybe as we look back on it now, that was a message from spirit, perhaps. But I started drinking and eating way too much. I was drinking a lot. I was eating a lot. I was up to about 325 pounds. This was around 2005 or so. Then I started to find my way out of it. I prayed and was always supposed to be the priest in our family, but I liked other things too much, so that was probably not a path. And interestingly enough, perhaps now I am the priest in my family in some ways, different than the traditional path being born as a Roman Catholic. Friends of mine offered me a job, so I was back on the payroll. They had a pool store, Tim and Brenda Quill in Connecticut, and that got me going there, which led me, and I want to show you how these things go through. If we pay attention, there is a way. If you have intention to go in a certain direction, you can find that happened. While I worked for my friends, earning some money and helping them out in a pool store in Bristol, Connecticut, I met a family who worked in that sort of strip mall. The woman had a hairdressing business. Her husband was the head of an advertising and marketing agency, which I had a background in. So I moved into that path and started going out on networking and marketing missions. And one day I went to a gathering of the Waterbury, Connecticut Chamber of Commerce at the Waterbury Country Club, and I ran into back-to-back Michael and Susie Duffy. These two people clearly changed my life at that point and to this day. We're very, very good friends. I'm sorry they've moved to California, but we started to get to know each other. They were in a network marketing company called Send Out Cards, and I liked the idea of using cards and gifts for my clients in the advertising and marketing business. So I'm really grateful to them. But what they really introduced me to was a way to feed my soul and introduced me to the law of attraction, which was Abraham Hicks. And we joined a group, we'd get together and talk to people, and then endlessly I would spend time listening to Esther talk about the law of attraction on YouTube. So this whole process then brought me through Send Out Cards to a convention in Vegas where I had met a woman through the Send Out Cards program who became my girlfriend for a short period of time. She was a naturopath and taught me many good things. She got me walking and exercising and eating properly. I actually weighed, living in my high school bedroom, I ended up weighing my high school weight of just under 200 pounds. So she really helped me a lot to get back in health at that time. After we split up, it was about 5 or 6 months later, she had gone to Australia to help people. And I ended up in the hospital thinking I was having a stroke or an aneurysm or something along those lines. I had a numbness and tingling coming from this side of my head. And my heart was going crazy. My blood pressure was 210 over 110. My heart rate was about 110. I just thought my heart was going to blow through my chest. So that brought me to the hospital a couple of times. During that process, I had been offered my very first national TV gig from Fox Sports to broadcast a college hockey game at Dartmouth. I felt because I was a decent guy, I should tell my producer that I wasn't sure I would make it through that broadcast. And he had actually had a guy die on the air once before. So I was really worried about that. Doctors, nurses kept saying, don't worry, you're fine, you're fine. Symptoms went down, blood pressure returned to normal. But I still felt, and still to this day, I think it's a tell. I'll tell you more about that as we go on here. Through this, I put on Facebook that I was being tested for all these things and allergies. And a good friend of mine, Kate from Connecticut, who I'd reconnected with at a friend's funeral, who sadly passed earlier in life than we thought would happen. She said, if you're having problems with allergies, you need to research Biontology and Johann Boswinkel. So I did. Strangely enough, no coincidences, another synchronicity, showing up the next day from the Netherlands was Johann Boswinkel, who was the founder of Biontology, giving a speech. So I went to that and I said, I want to get involved with this process. I would like a session. I think this could be the answer to it. It was leading me one step at a time. So I went, I loved it. I said, I want to have a session tomorrow. He said, Greg, I'm sorry, I'm leaving to go back to Europe, but we have a guy here. Well, the guy has turned out to be my mentor. His name is David Beatty, and many of you know him. David has been a good friend. He's a New York Rangers fan, which is probably most important to me, especially at that time. But we've learned and grown. He treated me. I felt fantastic. I never felt that good in my life as an adult, and it really helped bring me out of a fog. So after a couple of sessions, and we talked a lot about spirit, he said, I think you need to meet my mentor, which did happen. So the progression here is just moving along. This was a pivot, a decision I made to leave Massachusetts and my great broadcasting career, which was crumbling, to go home and take care of my mom, who, by the way, took care of me for the first 5 years. I took care of her for the final 5 years of her life. But I got close to David. He introduced me to Oris Bedridge and the good folks at Each One Teach One. And I became an integral part of that group and really grew within it, raising consciousness and vibration to higher and higher levels. Through that process, my mom passed away. We sold her house. I spent the $30,000 to buy a device and get trained by Boswinkel in New York City. And I started on the road to become a Biontologist. The place where we hold Each One Teach One in Hunter, New York, about 8 miles from where I am today, in Tannersville, New York, people, Oksana and Oleg Tasilsky, own a place called Xenia, where we meet and have our retreats. They were able to say, hey, look, you know, I was a nurse and I was a doctor in Ukraine before we came here, and we'd like to open a wellness center. And that started to anchor me here, which introduced me to Ed Ullman, who owns the pharmacy where I'm broadcasting from today. Ed is a remarkable man who blends traditional pharmacy with natural medicine, and he liked my natural progression for wellness. So we've become a team here most recently. So now I've changed from a sportscaster, and I do it a little bit. This, by the way, is my first TV appearance in quite some time, so thanks for that. I'm a Biontologist. As Susan mentioned before, I'm certified in Tui-Na Medical Chinese Massage, TongRen Quantum Medicine, and folks like other mentors, Ming Wu, a doctor in West Hartford, Connecticut, and Tom Tam in Quincy helped me to find my path in the traditional and Chinese medicine ways of working with meridians. So the Biontology works the body through the meridians from the inside out, and the other stuff works from the outside in, which gives me a really good mix of how we put things together. So for me, all was going great. I was happy, spiritual, growing, expanding, finding a new area of the world to live in. At one point, I got back to Connecticut. We were planning the very next Each One Teach One event. I was with David Beatty that night and Paul and Karen Cook, not far from their home in Ridgefield, at the Ridgefield Roadhouse. And on the way home from there, Paul and I were turning into his driveway, and out of nowhere, and I'm a very careful driver. Everybody calls me Grandpa, and nobody wants to ride with me because I drive so slow. But I don't care. That doesn't bother me much. I know Paul and Karen are probably laughing right now, and I see you. So we were turning into the driveway. I looked in my left mirror. I looked in the mirror for the cars behind me. There was nothing there. And I made the turn, and this car came flying through and blew my Pathfinder into a million pieces. the airbag went off and stunned me, really stunned me a lot. And it reverted me back to when I was in high school. I had been a volunteer fireman. Those kind of jobs as high school kids, we were the ones that were dragging cars and bits and pieces out of the road so no one would get hurt. So I went into the road. Paul went running after the guy that hit us to see if he could track him down. And so there I was, and a guy came up and said, "Hey, is everybody okay?" I said, yeah, keep going. We don't want anybody to get hurt here. Well, it was a 2-lane road, one lane in each direction. That car who stopped to talk to me for a second, his lights blinded a guy that was coming about 45 or 50 miles an hour up the other side. He hit me going that fast and he never saw me. And that just started a whole other chain of events. When the ambulance crew got there, they were pretty much saying that they thought I wasn't going to make it. They thought I was dead and then came back to life on the road. There's a lot of spiritual stuff back and forth, that maybe spirit took me out of my body and let the body get hit, and that's how I survived. But Susan started talking about this morning. There are a lot of miracles, and clearly I feel that I am one of them. I've asked a lot of spiritual people what they thought that was about. I had broken bones, leg and arm, rod in my leg, pins in my arm. My spine got all bent out of shape. My head was all cut up here. It was not pretty, as those who had seen me at that point would tell you. And I went on a journey where I was trying to figure out what was going on. Many of my group from Each One Teach One told me that I perhaps had gone through what was called a karmic cleanse. I kept getting a message for years that I was Nebuchadnezzar in another life. This guy was a bastard. He was the destroyer of worlds, though he did create the gardens of Babylon. But that was after a process of going into the desert for a while for cleaning up his karmic cleanse as well at that same time. So I felt completely different after that. I spent 2 or 3 weeks in the hospital where the doctors and nurses did a really good job taking care of me. I went to Pope John Paul II, which is a rehab facility for all my injuries, learning to walk again and all the rest of that. I got a lot of great help there, more doctors and nurses. I was there for 3 months. I'd like to thank, should they have tuned in, Kelly, who was an aide there, and Edith, who was a nurse there. They were like angels in human form taking care of me. At one point, towards the end of this, a nun who was working on premises came into my room and she said, "Can I have a moment with you?" And I said, "Sure, sister, come on in." I was starting to walk then, I had to relearn walking, and my arm wouldn't move, and I had to go through rehab for that. And she sits in my room and she says, "Who are you?" And I actually knew in the moment what she was saying, because during my rehab, I was the one as a patient that was counseling everybody else and riding around in my wheelchair, making people smile and trying to do the work that we all know from our spiritual journeys through Each One Teach One and whatever you are involved in. She said, "You're healing the people here faster than we can." And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing, but I knew when she said it, I knew where she was going with that. So I told her my story and we became good friends. Obviously, I've lost touch there, but I'd love to go back and see her. She was remarkable. Then some of the learning goes to many different ways, like gratitude and thankfulness and appreciation. At that point, I was still walking, but didn't have a car. My car was destroyed. My finances were completely ruined by my accident. My banks, my credit cards, I'm still working to repair those now, but that's going in the right way. And there were many great people that came to visit me. But when I left, including my brother who flew up from Georgia with my nephew Connor to come and see me, but there were a lot of really good friends that took care of me and prayed for me while I was in rehab. St. George's Church in Middlebury, Connecticut, and the Stone Ridge group of healers up here, the Roundout Valley group here in the Catskills. They even sent me a check for $500 to help me put a down payment on a new car. The incredible amount of gratitude I have for these people is amazing, and really, really good friends. And they're both on here now. You can see them. It says Karen, but Karen and Paul Cook hosted me in their house for 4 months while I learned to walk again, and then could buy a car and put me up. There's no words to say how grateful I am to them for what they did for me. It's I can't even come close to that. And then, just as about things were going, and Ed wanted me, he's like, when are you going to get up here? We want to get things started. COVID hit, and I had to stay an extra 3 months with the Cooks up until August. Finally, I got out of there, got up here, and got working, and I've got the dream job of a lifetime. I'm doing everything under this roof that I have been trained to do my whole life. I write, I work on the website, I help people with broadcasting. We do interviews here. So all of those skills have come back. Sales and marketing is on my list. Now I'm learning about supplements and vitamins and learning how to help other people. I see we're getting really close to 20 minutes. Should turn that off. I have a few more minutes to go here. But just to finish this up here, I'm in this area here near Xenia where I started. All my skills have come together. It's really been incredible. But I know one thing, and Susan again mentioned this too. We're all miracles, and I love every day. You know, I'm 64, and I know my best friend died at 61, and I just know that I love every day, and that prayers and community like yours are so really, really important.
Greg,
Yes.
just let you know, you can take another like 10 minutes actually.
I can wrap this up.
Okay.
Then we can have some questions, but thank you for that. Now, what I've been able to do is what I always wanted to do. I'm now really that shaman or Native American medicine man in a different form. I'd like to learn more. I will continue to learn more. I may work with a fella who's very good in tinctures and Chinese medicine that we just interviewed here at Wellness RX in Tannersville. So I'm guided by spirit every day. I've had a chance to really help people. I've learned the great power of prayer, and that is spiritual intention. And learning the quantum medicine of TongRen, that also goes to that. So I'm able to help so many, guided by spirit every day, especially during these changing and challenging times. I really believe that we're just kind of in the beginning of this, but I really do believe we're going to greater places. And groups like yours, people, brothers and sisters, if we continue to raise up our vibration, it raises the whole planet and beyond. So it's a real joy to come and speak with you and learn all about that. This is really why we're here now. We all chose to be here for these times, and we are all making a difference. So the pivot, which is my pivot, and we all have them, pay attention to everything, because it started off with what I thought was a failure, and I've been able to recreate myself through not one, but maybe 2 near-death experiences to where I am now, where I'm really making a difference helping people. It really is remarkable what we're able to do. There's no coincidences. As my good friend Ken Harris, who also treated me while I was in rehab, wrote a book recently called Synchronicities. Everything seems to be connected, including us to each other. So with that, that was kind of my path, my journey, my pivot to get to where I am today. And it all started with an intention in heart that this is what I wanted to do. Do I miss broadcasting games? Yes. About a month ago, I was in Ireland being asked by Northeastern, where I went to school, if I would step in and help out. And I do maybe 4 or 5 games a year. But with COVID, I may actually have now be retired. But I don't care too much about that anymore. I love doing those games, but I get to interview really interesting people about wellness and health now. and I will continue to do that. And I love where I am and what I'm doing and making a difference. So it's been an honor to share my path, but each and every one of you has a path, and my story is no different than yours. Just appreciate the fact to share it, and hopefully it helped and inspired some of you along the way. And I thank Ken for inviting me here today. It was great to speak with all of my loved ones who have joined here today. And Glenda and Susan, thank you very much for this opportunity.